McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. Tender, juicy, and its own sauce. Would you look at that? Well, you can't see it, but trust me, it looks delicious. New McCrispy strips, now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 171 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Just had a birthday.
Yeah, you're getting old, man. It's starting to show.
We all are. What are you going to do? But it was good. My daughter's got me a cool Yeti cooler.
Yeah, I've seen that up there.
That I've always wanted and would never buy myself because they're too expensive.
Well, they got it for them, you know.
I'm sure they'll use it. No doubt about that. We continue to have a great deal of Patreon support. And right now, more than ever, it just means so much to us. It goes a long way towards helping us keep putting out this podcast. So let's give some shout outs. We had Jackie Ingram.
Hey, Jackie.
Bianca Cribero.
What's going on, Bianca?
Josh Toomey.
Hey, Josh.
Molly Osmera.
Hey, Osmera.
Stephen Farquharson.
Sounds like a bad commercial, like Farfunugan, but it's
like a Volkswagen commercial.
But it's Farka.
Okay, well, you can't just make sounds up. I know I may not have said it correctly, but at least I, tried to say all the letters and stuff. We had Bailey Moss.
Hey, Bailey.
Donnie Nose.
What's going on, Nose?
Nicolene Jonker.
Hey, Jonker.
Tammy Ecott.
Hey, thanks, Tammy.
Christopher Dunlap.
What's going on, Christopher?
Donna Simmons.
Hey, thanks, Donna.
Justine Yee.
Hey, Yee.
Jessica Lahun.
Hey, Jessica.
Nuran Niazi.
Hey, Niazi.
Amelia Graff.
Thanks, Amelia.
Carissa Adkins.
Thank you, Carissa.
Melanie Lude.
What up, Lude?
Susan Anderson.
Hey, thanks, Susan.
Trisha.
Well, hey, Trisha.
Deborah Alexander.
Hey, thanks, Deborah.
And Faith.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Faith.
So that new support is much appreciated. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Phoebe Abdul.
Hey, Phoebe.
Been with us a long time, and we appreciate that long-term support.
It means everything to us.
We had some PayPal donations as well. Rosemary Overell.
Hey, Rosemary.
Eva's Nature Therapy.
What's up, Nature Therapy?
Rolanda Bradley.
Hey, Rolanda.
And Photo Card Gallery.
The Photo Card Gallery.
So,
gotta have it.
We got that going on.
Yeah.
Gibbs, right now we have a brand new episode out on TCAT. Little wild.
Really wild.
Yeah. We're talking about Joseph Christopher.
Yeah.
The .22 caliber killer, also known as the Midtown Slasher.
Yeah.
And a couple of other possible nicknames too. But, this is a case of a white man specifically targeting African-American males in and around the Buffalo, New York area. I think the questions to ask or to try to answer in this episode are, number one, why?
Right.
And there are some theories. There are some things that, he has said. And I think it's an episode that many people will find fascinating.
I know I did.
I mentioned it on TCAT, but I'll say it here as well. On my other show, Criminology, right now we have out an interview with the Golden State Killer's brother-in-law.
Yeah, how interesting is that?
Yeah, so I really invite people to go listen and check that out. And I think it was a good get as far as interviews go and how timely it is, given that D'Angelo just, pleaded guilty to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the 1987 disappearance in Washington of Julie Weflen. It was on Wednesday, September 16th, 1987, in Spokane County, Washington. 28-year-old Julie Weflen was making her rounds for the company she worked for, the Bonneville Power Administration. Julie traveled the region, checking power substations, working on the transformers, checking meters, and essentially just working on whatever power equipment was there.
Yeah, keep things running. Make sure things are always operational.
Well, Julie had received a call that there was a problem at one of her substations. One of the transformers was low on nitrogen. Now, I don't know anything about transformers, but I assume that's a bad thing.
I'm guessing too.
So Julie had gone to check on this transformer. She arrived at the substation and parked her service minivan on the gravel drive off the Four Mounds Road and Coley Height Road intersection. She signed in at around 2:30 p.m. at the non-manned location. And she eventually found the issue with the transformer, and it was low nitrogen. This was around 2:45, and this repair would have taken roughly about an hour.
Yeah, so she should have been wrapped up by 3:45 at the latest.
And when she wrapped up this type of repair or did whatever she was supposed to do at a substation, she would call into her office and check in. But she never did. It was around 9 p.m. when the local Spokane Sheriff's Office got a call from a resident. This resident said that she drove by the substation around 5 p.m. and she had seen the service van parked with the doors open. Now, what she told the sheriff's office was she didn't think much about it at that point, but when she returned home a few hours later, she saw that the van was still in the same position with the door still open. So she thought, okay, that seems odd.
Yeah, I would agree.
Maybe this is a scenario where I should alert somebody in law enforcement. A deputy who was already cruising this rural area known as 7 Mile area. And Gibbs, this 7 Mile area has seen its share of disappearances and murders over the years. And that's something we'll touch on as we go along in this episode. The deputy came out to the substation, saw the service vehicle in the gravel drive. Its driver's side door was open, as was the back hatch door. And I think, like we talked about, he thought this was very strange, as did the woman that called in, for it to be like that for that period of time.
Yeah, that late at night, still like that. Yeah, definitely strange.
So he got out of his vehicle to go and investigate. As he walks up to the service minivan, he saw another vehicle's tire tracks in the dirt next to the gravel, and it looked to him as though this vehicle had sped out of there in a hurry. As the deputy approached the vehicle, he spotted a yellow hard hat near the outside of the van and then a pair of sunglasses. When the deputy looked inside the van, he saw a purse. As the deputy walked around the van, he saw that it looked like a struggle had occurred and that the driver had been dragged to another vehicle.
So he could see where the gravel has been shuffled around. And then at one point, it appeared that someone was dragged across the gravel because you can kind of see the indents into the gravel where someone's feet would have dragged. And then they stop and obviously must have been either pushed into a car or something happened.
But I mentioned that the deputy found a purse inside the van. Inside the purse was the driver's information. So from there, pretty easy to figure out who is missing. It's Julie Weflen. The deputy called the emergency number at the substation and then requested another deputy to be sent to Julie's home to see if anyone there knew anything. When that deputy arrived at Julie's house, no one was there. But the sheriff's department was able to find out that she was married, and they got a message to her husband, who was out of town on a job site.
He was like 60 miles away doing a paint job. He was painted on new construction homes.
So Mike Weflen got this message, and he called the sheriff's office and told them that he had not heard from Julie all day. And he added that he was coming home as soon as possible to help look for Julie. He did tell the investigators that Julie was tiny, 5'2". She only weighed 100 pounds. So if someone did grab her out of that service minivan, it probably would have been pretty easy for them to restrain her, which I get, Gibbs. I mean, unless she's a practitioner of judo or, a black belt in some type of martial art or a UFC trainee, you're giving up a lot to most adult males. You could be giving up 100, 150 pounds.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight.
It is a lot of weight. Yeah. Around 9:30 p.m., the sheriff's department called some search dogs out to the site.
So you're telling me they phoned up some dogs and said, "Hey, we need you to come out to this site"?
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, can you?" And they're like, "Ruff, ruff, ruff,"
Well, then of course the dogs didn't answer because they were too busy playing poker.
Yeah, exactly. Busy that night. Sorry, buddy.
So I'm assuming they called maybe the dog's handlers.
Exactly.
And said, "Hey, can you bring your search dogs out?"
Now, yep, get them up here.
By midnight, the site had a dozen officers from the sheriff's and state patrol office. The dogs searched through the high brush. Investigators worked on the tire tracks, the minivan, and the substation until morning.
There's a lot of activity going on up there.
Well, it's a very interesting potential crime scene.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's an unmanned or unwomaned,
right?
Which I don't think that's a word, but to be politically correct, substation. There's nobody else out there.
No.
It's kind of rural. And so who are you going to talk to? It's not like you're interviewing a bunch of people. You're not going to find a number of witnesses that saw what happened unless you find somebody that was driving by like that woman. Unfortunately, she didn't see anything happen. She just saw the minivan twice and thought it was strange, which it was strange.
Yeah, I think anybody driving by seeing that would have to question that.
I don't even know if there was video surveillance at this type of substation back in 1987. None of the articles we found mentioned it. And if there was, that would have been one of the first things police would have gone to.
Oh, absolutely.
That morning, the van was towed to the crime lab to be analyzed for any further evidence. Authorities thought whoever had taken Julie might have released her in the area. So they set up a search party for that area. And this wasn't just any search party. This wasn't like, hey, just come on down, whoever wants to help out. They had 30 people who knew how to search the dense forest surrounding the substation. Fellow employees who knew the lay of the land. They had hikers, deputies, rangers. They also had 2 helicopters sweeping the entire area for any clues or signs of Julie.
But they also brought in even more search dogs. They really wanted to see if they could pick up any type of scent and expand on the search area that they were looking in from the time that they started last night till now in the morning to see if they can just get anything that would lead them to her.
By the next day, they had almost 100 searchers in the forest and 3 helicopters in the air. Now, this was necessary. I mean, we're talking about 225 square miles of dense forest to try to search.
It's a lot of searching.
It's a lot of searching. It's also very tough searching, right? We're not talking about wide open spaces where the helicopter can just do some flybys. It's probably not going to be able to see under the canopy of this dense forest Yeah, you can fly the helicopters around.
Yeah.
But to check this very dense forest, you're going to have to go in on foot.
Yeah, because otherwise that canopy's just covering that up. It really is truly the meaning of finding a needle in a haystack.
The Red Cross set up a tent near the command post to assist the searchers, and the FBI sent an agent to take control of the investigation. Because I think at this point they believed this to be a kidnapping, which means the FBI can get involved.
Yeah, especially if the FBI thinks that she could have been transported across the state line.
The FBI, along with other investigators, interviewed Mike Weflen. They interviewed co-workers and residents who lived near the substation. They learned that Mike and Julie used to live about 2 miles from the substation, so she knew this area fairly well. Leads started to come in about a strange, unknown white car in the area that day that parked by the substation but sped off when someone came near it. Another lead came in about a black car with Oregon plates that was seen in the area as well, but nothing really comes from either of these leads about these two different cars. By the weekend, the official search was called off, but dozens of volunteers and friends continued to search along with Julie's husband. They had searchers on horseback. They had searchers hiking. A co-worker of Julie's put up a $1,000 reward for any lead that helped find her. The next day, that reward went up to $10,000.
Getting some momentum.
Yeah. And by the 1 week anniversary, her employer brought the reward up to $20,000. Now it would eventually climb to $40,000. Over 5,000 flyers were distributed to the residents and local businesses. Mike was determined. There was no way he was going to give up trying to find Julie.
I mean, this is just within the first week. He's doing all this. He's very dedicated on trying to find his missing wife.
Something that I hope, any good husband would do.
He even puts up billboards in several locations to try to help find her.
After a month went by, no significant leads, no Julie, Mike Weflen decided to make over 17,000 posters and flyers, and he had them placed throughout 5 different states.
Yeah, he got really busy. He made this his full-time job. I remember reading one article that he took a leave from his painting job for an extended amount of time because he needed to concentrate solely on trying to find his wife.
I feel like I would be right with him. You're telling me my wife's missing, or you're telling me one of my girls is missing. Gibbs, I don't give a rat's ass about anything else. The podcast, anything.
No, you'd want to find whoever was missing.
Yeah. That would be my sole purpose in life at that point.
Yeah.
And everything else goes out the window.
Yeah.
So on these flyers that Mike made up, he listed Julie's height at 5'2", said she weighed 100 pounds, had brown hair, brown eyes, and a scar on her upper back from where a metal rod had been inserted. The flyers also said that she had been wearing her black Casio watch as well as her gold wedding band. And they put a current picture of Julie on these posters and flyers.
But he's pretty smart, He also ends up sending these flyers to all the sheriff offices in the 11 states that are closest to where they live.
2 months after Julie went missing, volunteers held another search party. Again, they had hikers, they had riders on horseback, and this time they even had four-wheelers searching for Julie. But after a few hours, one of the hikers fell 40 feet off the edge of a trail and needed to be rescued from the area. So the search was ended because obviously now we got to save this hiker.
Yeah. It got really risky out there. I mean, it was a really tough terrain. I know that. I've seen some of the pictures. I've seen some of the elevations in that area. I mean, like you said, it's dense. You got rocky slopes. If you don't know that area, you could get hurt. Yeah, if you're a novice hiker, this is not.
At one point, a psychic reached out to the sheriff's department and said that Julie was in a nearby lake. So divers were brought in to check out the lake, but they didn't find Julie. Authorities thought they had a real break in this case when some bones were found. They went out to investigate, but they turned out to be animal bones. 1 year after Julie's disappearance, police had one person of interest. This was a man named William Parks, who owned an outdoor adventure company. But William refused to cooperate. He told a member of the press that he didn't know Julie. He didn't even know about her disappearance until investigators came to talk to him. He said that he felt like they wanted to frame someone for Julie's disappearance, and because of his past, he was an easy target. And here's what William Parks meant by his past. It turned out that at a party in mid-March 1986 in the city of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, William met a woman named Deborah Jean Swanson, who was a school teacher. He hit on her, but she didn't want to have anything to do with him, and he got upset. On March 29th, 2 weeks later, Deborah was seen hiking near a trail. The police found her car at a nearby parking lot with shopping bags and her purse still in it. Deborah was officially considered missing on April 1st, 1986. And Gibbs, they did extensive searches of the area where they believe she went missing, just like they did in Julie's case.
Yeah.
But they didn't find her, and they really didn't have much in the way of clues as to what happened to her. But the police did have a person of interest in Deborah's case, which was William Parks.
Yeah. And to this day, she still is missing.
So her case has never been solved.
Never been solved.
Just a month later, in Coeur d'Alene, another woman went missing. It was Sally Ann Stone, who was an exotic dancer. On May 16th, 1986, Sally was last seen leaving her doctor's office. She was there to see the doctor because she had injured her knee. She was supposed to return to the doctor 3 days later, but she never showed. She also failed to visit her husband, who was in jail at the time for theft. Police checked her home and found her car there with a bag of donuts still inside. It appeared that Sally had been kidnapped, and Gibbs, she too, has never been heard from or seen again. But the other commonality is that she had met William Parks before her disappearance. So here you have this guy that is intertwined or somewhat connected in some way to three missing women. But even though I'm sure police were suspicious of this man, they had no evidence that he had anything to do with either Deborah or Sally's disappearance. But it begs the question. Number one, did he? And number two, could he have taken Julie Weflen? I think a lot of people, Gibbs, believe that this man knew something. And when I say something, that's pretty broad.
It is.
He could have had something to do with it directly. He could have known who did it. I'm just saying something. The problem is, at every step, at every turn, he refused to cooperate with police.
Yeah, it's not looking good when you refuse to cooperate, but...
Now, he did used to live over by the substation in that 7-mile area from where Julie disappeared.
He also belonged to an outdoor adventurous group in her area that she belonged to that same group. So, when he says, I don't know who she is, I mean, he belonged to the same group. He lived in the area at one point. I mean, there's a chance maybe he didn't know her. But I think you can kind of see a tie in there, though.
Sure.
You know, I mean,
and I think all of these things that we're saying about all three women and William's connection to the three, that's why police were suspicious of him, no doubt.
Yeah.
And that's how you get labeled as a person of interest. But here's the problem with William Parks as a possible suspect or person of interest. He died years ago. So he's not coming forward with any additional information, obviously. Now, there were other theories of who could have abducted Julie Weflen. And some of these were big names, right? Notorious serial killers such as the Lewis Clark Valley Killer. Robert Lee Yates has been mentioned by people. We did cover the Lewis Clark Valley Killer in an earlier Unsolved episode.
Yeah, we did. I know those murders took place in that 1979 to 1982 range.
So a little before.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that's when that killer stopped.
Sure.
It just meant that he moved on, and maybe this is where he moved on to.
Now, I will say about Robert Lee Yates, I don't think he's considered by many people to be a viable suspect, but he was operating, during this time. I think the other thing to talk about is the number of unsolved murders in and around this area in the years before Julie disappeared. Another name that is sometimes bandied about is Doug Perry, who was later known as Donna Perry. Donna was convicted in 2017 for 3 murders in 1990 in Spokane, Washington. It's thought that Doug Perry was active in the area and might have been involved in Julie's disappearance. I think the problem that most people have with Doug Perry is that Julie doesn't fit Doug's MO. So most people think, it's probably doubtful that she was a victim of Doug Perry.
It's still interesting. Again, we just talked about 3 or 4 really bad killers.
Sure.
In one region. You've got all this activity going on.
Famous author Anne Rule wrote about Julie's disappearance in her book, Kiss Me, Kill Me. Now, Gibbs, we've mentioned earlier in the episode about this area known as 7 Mile area. Since 1967, there have been almost 24 murders in this area. Some have been solved. Some are still unsolved. There have also been a handful of disappearances as well. Even areas that border the 7 Mile area have had some tragic events unfold there as well. The stretch of dense forest and tough terrain, and the fact that it's so rural, has a very low population, it's almost as if it has become a perfect dumping ground for bodies. You hate to say it that way.
No, I think you're right. And I think it also makes it easy for someone if they want to kidnap someone, someone out walking, somebody hitchhiking, somebody hiking, climbing, anything, anybody passing through. It just makes it easy because who's going to see you? It kind of reminds me when we did the Trail of Tears up in Canada, because those truckers would roll through, pick up a hitchhiker, and just 5-10 miles down the road after they killed the victim, they would just roll them out, never to be seen again.
Yeah, and it's like they had very little concern about being spotted. Right? It's not New York City. You're not bumper to bumper. It's not LA traffic. Some of these areas are sparsely populated. You could go a long drive without seeing someone, or you could be in the woods and never encounter anybody.
Yeah.
Or you could encounter one person and decide, I want to do something bad. Nobody's ever going to see me do this.
Yeah.
Some of the more well-known murders in this area are that of 47-year-old Ruby Lamson and 31-year-old Dorothy Fielding. Ruby went missing in June of 1967 and Dorothy just 2 months later And then a month after Dorothy's disappearance, 27-year-old Sandra Pearson was found dead. Dorothy's body was found in a shallow grave in April of 1968. But animals had eaten or hauled off the majority of her skeletal remains. Ruby Lampson's body was found 4 years later and about 2 miles away from where Dorothy was found. Her body, too, was in a shallow grave, but police were not able to determine cause of death. Sandra Pearson was found dead in her garage. She and her husband lived in the 7 Mile area. Her husband was a deputy sheriff, and her death was originally ruled a suicide. Her body was found in her car in their closed garage with a hose extending from the exhaust pipe to inside the rear window. Now, Sandra was a very tiny woman, and it's thought that it would have been extremely difficult for her to have closed the heavy, manually operated garage door on her own.
Yeah, there's definitely some suspicion around labeling her death as suicide.
Ruby's and Dorothy's cases, they went unsolved for over 50 years. But then the cold case team working them, they got a solid tip, a good lead. And it was that both of these women, Ruby and Dorothy, frequented the same tavern. But the bigger revelation was that so did someone else, Sandra's husband, Duke Pearson. The cold case team was able to dig into the files, and they reviewed some notes that showed Duke and Dorothy had an alleged affair. But when she called it off with Duke, he started sending her threatening notes and letters at both work and at home. Investigators were able to find information that Duke had made some unwanted advances towards Ruby and had also stalked her. Ruby was scared because Duke was a deputy and he had a reputation. And for those reasons, she felt as though she couldn't go to police. She could not report him. The cold case team, in reviewing Sandra's case notes, saw several entries about how she was fearful of Duke. He had threatened her against ever leaving him and taking his children away from him. Investigators talked to Sandra's children in 2018, and they felt as though no way had their mother taken her life. So that year, investigators visited Duke, who by that time was retired in Georgia. And he was pretty blunt. He told investigators, you know what? You're wasting your time. You're also wasting my time because I don't even know who these two women are.
Yeah. Why are you even here?
But investigators weren't going to let this go. They kept searching. They kept interviewing people and combed through all the evidence. And eventually all that hard work pays off. They were able to put together enough evidence to arrest and charge Duke Pearson with the first-degree murders of Dorothy Fielding and Ruby Lampson. The arrest warrant was filed on Friday, January 25th, 2019. Investigators called the local police where Duke lived to have him picked up. But Duke Pearson died 3 days before being brought to justice.
Kind of sad.
It's very sad because he died an innocent man.
Right.
Right. There was no jury that convicted him. It never got that far. Now, would they have convicted him? Possibly, if prosecutors and investigators had all the evidence that they needed.
Right.
Obviously, they had enough that they felt they needed to charge him.
Yeah, and like you said, if they had been able to get him back for a trial, who knows what would have happened, but maybe they could have somehow introduced Sandra's suicide into this whole thing as well and figured out, was it really suicide?
Well, again, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Sure.
But let's say, for the sake of argument, that they had the evidence, and they would have garnered a conviction against Duke for the murder of Dorothy and Ruby. Is it a big stretch to say, okay, if he was willing to do that, and maybe he did play a role in his own wife's death that was ruled a suicide? In this same 7 Mile area, another well-known case occurred. It was the murder of Nikki Wood and the disappearance of her friend, Rebecca West. 12-year-old Rebecca and 11-year-old Nikki were both last seen together on October 21st, 1991. They were at a local gas station getting a few items and then should have gone home. But about 2 hours after the girls had been seen at the gas station, the sheriff received a call about a pile of pine needles that had been set on fire. Nikki's dead body was discovered under this pile of pine needles. She had been strangled to death and buried under the pine needles, and then those were set on fire. But Rebecca was nowhere to be found. The sheriff brought in bloodhounds that day, and they followed a scent from where Nikki was found back to a cabin where a man named Michael Tarbert lived. This guy was known by police for getting into trouble, especially if he was using drugs or drinking. He told police the dogs found the girl's scent because he gave both girls a ride home that day.
Yeah, but the fishy part about that is the dogs got a hit on the girl's scent inside his cabin.
Well, that kind of flies in the face of the, oh, I just gave these two girls a ride home and nothing more.
Right.
So they arrested him, but it wasn't for Nikki's murder or Rebecca's disappearance. It was for an active arrest warrant for sexually assaulting his former landlord and robbing her of $500. He was found guilty in 1992 and received 11 years. It wasn't until 1996 that authorities charged him with the murder of both girls, Nikki and Rebecca. And this came about because an eyewitness came forward who said that they saw the girls get into Michael's car at the gas station. Also, 2 prison inmates said that Michael told them he killed the girls while tripping on drugs.
Which is probably important because he already said, I gave the girls a ride in my car home. But I think the fact that if he ever changed his story, now they have an eyewitness that said, oh yeah, we saw the girls get in the car with them. And then you have these 2 inmates, telling their story of how he said he actually did kill them.
Michael's trial was to start in May of 1998, but just days before, he made a deal to plead no contest for the murder of Nikki and Rebecca in exchange for a sentence of 20 years versus what could have been and probably would have been life. Now, he claims he never killed them, but had no choice but to take the deal because he couldn't risk getting life, right? If he's convicted,
right,
he's probably going to get life. What's interesting about that claim, early on in the investigation, investigators found a pair of Michael's pants that had blood on them. The problem is they had no way back then to prove that the blood had come from either Nikki or Rebecca. But later on, as DNA testing advanced, that technology got better, they were able to prove that the blood on his pants was Nikki's.
But even with all that, he still denies that he had anything to do with the murder or the disappearance of Nikki and Rebecca. And therefore, he refuses to say where Rebecca's body was buried. And that's sad because her family most likely will never know what happened to Rebecca.
Gibbs, there are a ton of other cases in this area. A woman named Linda Strait was found in a river. Sherry Palmer was found shot in the chest on Spokane Mountain. Margaret Quashnick was found in the river, and Chris Ann Baxter was found strangled. And that's just a few. Like we said, there have been almost 24 murders in this area over the years, many still unsolved. But as we wrap up this case of Julie Weflen, again, her body has never been found. As far as I know, there have been no reports of sightings of her, as you have sometimes in missing persons cases. But this one is extremely tough. We talked about how dense the area is where she went missing, the low population. And now it's 30 years plus later. This one, I think, will be a very tough case to solve.
Yeah, I agree. I know her husband, Mike, continues to try to get more information and keeps looking. He's remarried since then and has moved on out of the area, but he hasn't forgotten about her. He still keeps trying to see if anything can develop out of this.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. When you say he's moved on to some degree. He's gotten remarried, but he's never given up on trying to figure out what happened to his wife, Julie.
Yeah.
And he probably never will. That's it. That's it for the case of Julie Weflen. Gibbs, we've got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hi, guys. I'm a huge fan. I've been listening for what seems like forever. This is Chris, and a long-time listener. I am a new Patreon supporter, and this is my first time calling. I just finished listening to your latest episode, and you were talking about what it must be like to be named Chris and married to a person named Chris. I hate to admit this, but I was married a long time ago for a very short time. My name is Kristen with a K, and I married a man named Christopher, and we were collectively known as the Chris's, and that didn't last very long. But what's really weird is that he ended up marrying another woman named Kristen, and so, but it gets better. Years later, this was back in the early 90s, years later in the 2000s, all of a sudden I get a Facebook friend request from Christopher, which is great, and then his whole family is friend requesting me, and then a long time his wife, Kristen, friend requesting me, and it was very surreal. So yeah, it was like a weird dream. My life is very bizarre. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of you guys. I tried to get the hashtag Team City going, but nobody took that, so I'm great up to you, Mike. I love you guys. Keep up the great work. Bye.
All right. Love it. Chris and Chris, the Chris's. I still think it would be strange because now somebody calls and they're like, hey, can we speak to Chris? Mm-hmm. Now her name was Kristen. So I think maybe by default, you assume if they're asking for Chris, they're asking for the husband.
Right.
But you never know.
No, you don't.
Hi, Fergie and Gibby. This is Kim McRae, working the graveyard shift at your local grocery store in Draper, Utah. I don't ever hear very many people from Utah, but then I'm only into 2018 on TCAT. I just finished the Jaden Smith episode, which, yes, made me angry all over again because I remember that when it happened. I love your guys' podcast. I just found it like a month ago. So I'm just binging like crazy every night at work for 8 hours. And I also do the Unsolved. I do that at home when I'm getting ready for work. And I also do that when I'm driving because those are a little bit shorter. And I just want to say you guys are doing a great job. Love everything you do. I am both Team Fergie and Team Gibby. There's no way to make a choice between the two of you. Hopefully I will catch up and hear my voicemail at some point. But love what you guys are doing. You are amazing and you are my favorite podcast. So keep your own time ticking, guys. Thanks.
She's busy keeping all that fry sauce on the shelf.
Stocking that fry sauce. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've actually done quite a few cases in Utah.
That was 4 or 5, I think.
But I just don't think she's probably gotten to them yet.
Right.
But she will. She's got a lot to get through. And it's probably going to be a while before she hears this voicemail.
Yeah, she's got a way to go.
Got a lot to catch up on.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Bea calling again. I called actually last week and gave a suggestion for an unsolved case. Calling from Maine, actually calling from Portland, but I left a message about Jay. I wanted to let you guys know I listened to your Patreon about Black Lives Matter, and I really, really appreciate you guys coming out and taking a stand because I am a Black woman and I wonder often about the people I support and their ideas and their beliefs, and I really appreciate hearing your perspective. Gibby, something that you said about you don't worry about your son, getting pulled over or walking home. That just really resonated with me, and I really appreciate your candidness, being willing to speak about that and your lack of knowledge about that, and being willing to listen and learn, and hearing that you guys do care about us. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you and all the work you do. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
We definitely appreciate that. We have gotten a lot of positive feedback about that Patreon episode that we put out, made available for everyone. I don't think we said anything groundbreaking. I think, obviously there are a lot of people echoing the same sentiments that you and I said, but everything we said was true, especially the parts about us not ever really having experienced some of those things.
Right.
We just never had to go through it.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Melissa from Illinois. I am calling because today is June 29th, and today is my birthday and also Mike's birthday. Well, Fergie's birthday, since you both are Mike. But anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that I have been enjoying the show now for about 2 years and look forward to every new episode that comes out. I listen to all three, the True Crime All the Time, T-Cat Unsolved, and also I'm a Patreon as well. So I hope you have a wonderful birthday. I am splurging with some shopping for my birthday today as well. Anyway, keep your own time ticking. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Same birthday. Love it. I hope you had as wonderful a birthday as I did.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, buddy. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.